Well, the president is reportedly expected to take full responsibility for the security breakdown in this Christmas Day bomb plot, a confession that my next guest says is sorely needed. With us now, Father Robert Sirico, the president of the Acton Institute. And, Father, I hope you weren't watching the pictures that we were just showing of me.
I could see nothing. I have nothing to confess.
Good, and I have nothing to ask your forgiveness for then. What do you make of this, Father, if indeed the president is going to take responsibility? I guess it's how it's worded, but that's a step in the right direction, you say, right?
Yes. No, I think confession is very good for the soul. I don't mean by that confessing other people's sins, you know. It's not just putting blame. It's taking responsibility for failure in maintaining the oath of office in which he said that he would protect and defend the United States. And so I think that's where we need to begin. And that doesn't need to erode any authority or respect. In fact, that's the foundation of authentic authority and respect, because then we know we're getting to the truth of things and we can build from there. So honesty, transparency, confession is good for the soul.
How do you know, Father, when someone means it?
Well, that's a very difficult question. I mean, even as a priest who hears confessions, sometimes people themselves don't know whether they mean it or not. Depends on the formation of the person, the defense mechanisms that they've put in place. A lot of people don't know what honesty is. They live in a kind of illusion that they've projected, and not just projected to others, but that they've convinced themselves. So this could be difficult. I think there are facial features, there are gestures, certainly the words, and whether or not one is taking responsibility or just calculating the political effect of a thing.
And there's also this notion that it shows a vulnerability, right? And leaving the religious stuff out of it, Father, I think there is the fear that as the commander-in-chief, the leader of the free world, if you look very fallible, then you lose some capital. Isn't that a legitimate fear?
Well, I think there's a difference between admitting errors and admitting mistakes and things that have gone wrong and placing the nation in a situation of vulnerability. I think that people can read through a false security, a false confidence more readily, and I think that creates a real insecurity, a real situation of security that has to be addressed. So owning what has happened. You know, imagine, I don't think the date that was chosen for this event that would have happened was lost. The significance of that date, December 25th, was lost on the alleged or the perpetrators of this action. So I think we have to think of it in its full context, take ownership, and then and only then can we move forward.
If you don't mind while I've had you here, Father, this comes at a time, assuming the president does take this responsibility, and by the way, it won't be the whole of his remarks. He's going to outline in this report where the screw-ups were and name names and that sort of thing, not fire anybody. But do you think, you know, there is this notion that if you screw up, you have to pay for it, even when you admit for, something, and if you admit a failure or you admit your administration's partly to blame, someone's got to lose a job, shouldn't they?
Well, you know, it would be good if someone offered themselves and said, look, I take responsibility. I think one very clear thing that happened was that Secretary Napolitano, in attempting to calm the nation, shows her own tendency to play to the political crowd. She was saying things that were not only dumb but dangerous, and I think they reveal a character that's playing more to the political than to reality itself. So I would rather see, rather than people blamed.
Go ahead, finish that point.
No, rather than seeing blame, I'd rather see people take responsibility for their part in the error that's, and then weigh it in this context.
See, I don't mind, Father, interrupting regular guests when they appear. I interrupt you, and I might lose a lot more. Father, I do want to touch on, if you don't mind, this blame issue. It comes at a time that we get the president's briefing book now is being put on the podium. That's what he's going to refer to for his speech, where a lot of folks are shifting the blame. You have the former head of Citigroup, Sandy Weil, blaming all the problems there on his successor, regrets hiring him. Ben Bernanke, the head of the Fed, blaming everyone else pretty much but himself for a lot of the problems. This administration has spent a lot of time blaming the prior administration. What do you make of that?
I think that's a reflection of a broader cultural fear of accepting guilt. In the popular notion, if you accept guilt, you have to accept the belief in absolute moral standards. You have to accept responsibility. And what we've done is we've created this notion that if you accept guilt for something, that it somehow erodes your self-esteem. I don't think that's true at all. I think the basis of authentic self-esteem, dignity, is to accept the truth and then to begin. People are not mistakes, but people make mistakes. And when they own the mistakes themselves, rather than blaming somebody else, then we can move forward, because conversion, repentance, amelioration, forgiveness is always possible. But if you don't begin with honesty at the beginning, if you're just pointing the fingers, that's that political tendency that's really so common in our present culture.
Well, no offense, Father, but I built a career on it, so that's something I guess I got to work on. Father Robert Sirico, a real pleasure, sir. Thank you very, very much. Some good words of advice.
Neil. Take care. Happy New Year.
To you as well, Father Robert Sirico. Okay.